chance to work on building something as interesting and significant as the George W. Bush Presidential Center. And I go, well, I have experience building complex real estate projects. I served in government. I'm interested in presidential history. I even like to watch C-SPAN 3. But the big reason and the real reason that I have this really great job is 23 years ago, George and Laura Bush moved to Dallas, Texas, and they bought the house next door to me. And we became friends. And if there's one thing I can testify to that's true then and is true today, is that George and Laura Bush are true partners in life. And George W. Bush truly and deeply loves his wife. So it is an honor for me to introduce to you a man who truly and deeply loves his wife, the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush.
Thank you all for coming. So it seems fitting to me that for the America's First Ladies Conference, we actually have First Ladies. And it's my honor to introduce them. Before I do so, I want to thank Mark Langdale for his leadership of the George W. Bush Foundation. I want to thank Anita McBride for conceiving and sharing what has been a really fascinating discussion. I actually watched some of it being streamed over the internet. I want to thank Gerald Turner of SMU and the SMU folks. SMU is an awesome university, by the way, and we are honored to be associated with it. And Neil Kerwin, president of American University, and his wife Ann have joined us. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank the library directors. Alan Lowe, of course, of the Bush President 43. Warren Finch, Bush President 41. And look, I'll be the funny guy. And Mark Updegrove of Lyndon Baines Johnson's library right down the road. So, first of all, I want to say something about Doris Kearns Goodwin. We're fortunate to have her here. She's an awesome historian. She really is. She wrote, I read a lot of history when I was president. I can just hear people saying, we paid you all that money and all you do is sit around reading. It was fascinating. Well, I didn't watch much TV. Anyway, it was fascinating to read history while I had the honor of making history. And no better historian to help a president understand the past and the future, by the way, than Doris Kearns Goodwin. So we're honored you're here. And so the other thing that impressed me about Doris Kearns Goodwin is she raised a son who became a United States Marine, volunteered to be a United States Marine after September the 11th. I have the honor of introducing the best First Lady ever. Mom, would you take a tie? Obviously, I don't mind being surrounded by strong women. I was raised by one. I married one. And I believe we're raising two. Welcome, former First Ladies, Barbara and Laura Bush.
Thank you, Chair. I thought he'd leave. Well, for me, this is such a great honor. Can you imagine having spent my life trying to bring presidents and first ladies who are no longer alive to life? I've got live ones here. Much more fun. We hope. I always worry that I worry that someday I worry that someday in the afterlife, there'll be a panel of all the presidents I've ever studied, and everybody will tell me every single thing I got wrong. The first person to yell out will be LBJ. How come that damn book on the Kennedys was twice as long as the book about it? But let me begin, because I love to tell stories from the beginning, with what it was like when you first get to the White House. You have this great line where you said, I woke up with the president-elect. What's it like to wake up with the president in the morning and know that he's president, and know that you're in a place that has 132 rooms and you have to make it a home? How do you do that?
The house really, I think, was very easy. We brought furniture for the one family room, which was beautiful, and our own curtains came, matched the couches that we brought. First of all, the 90-some people who work for you are family. They really are. And when we went back all those years later, 8 years later, when George and Laura were there was our family. They were still there. And there's some of them still there, not many anymore. Old age got them.
Did you have a favorite place in the White House where you like to go?
Well, I loved my little office because it was, besides being Nancy Reagan's beauty parlor, which she didn't like me to say, but it was. And the dogs were born there, and you could look out the window at Jackson Place and what's that park?
Lafayette Square.
Lafayette Square, and you could see all sorts of wonderful things. Now, nobody else faced that part of Washington, but I saw more people protesting us, and some people who loved us. And I saw people, weddings, they would back up and have a wedding picture taken.
Wow.
I saw my first black bridesmaids' dresses backing up to have their picture taken by the White House. I mean, their dresses were black, which I thought was amazing. But I loved looking out at the people.
I can well imagine. How about you? How did you go about that? And you'd already been there, of course.
I'd already been there. I had a huge advantage that no one else, I guess, except Louisa Adams had, and that is because I'd been there so often. And I knew already from having been there with Barr and with my father-in-law, President Bush, that it really is a home. And I knew Barr had made it into a home. It was a home where our little girls, when they were 7, when their grandfather was president, could slide down the ramp from the conservatory, the solarium that you saw in several of the photos earlier, the wooden ramp, slide down that on their bottom, or make the running jump to the one big antique bed that was so tall that it required steps to get into, but Barbara and Jenna could run and jump on it at that age. They also, when the Obamas came for the tour, they showed Sasha and Malia all of those tricks from their childhood in the White House, sliding down the ramp and jumping on the beds. So I really knew, and because I knew that there was this really magnificent collection of White House furniture, I didn't move anything with us. We had just moved into our ranch house, which is where all our furniture went. So I brought one chest of drawers for my dressing room that was George's grandmother's, just to have that there, just to remember her. And then I brought some of our books, a few of our books. I also knew that we would get lots of books, and so I didn't bring our whole library. And just brought personal photographs, and then had a wonderful time going to the big warehouse. You can't call it a warehouse because it's really climate and temperature control with a conservator storage space where all the White House furniture was, and bringing back different pieces to the White House.
To what extent are you aware of other presidents and their first wives and their first lady and the first lady being in different rooms?
I think there's a place in the White House which later became closets, I think, for ladies' clothes. That's where I hung my evening clothes and things. That if you walk down, looking out at Lafayette Square, where presidents made great pronouncements to people, and we brought a historian up, Lincoln historian up, and he said, I just can't believe I'm here. Now, granted, they had redone the White House but he felt he knew it. So he went right to the closet, down the corridor, and I think the girls' rooms opened
on both sides.
But he ran right down there and looked, and there wasn't the portico or something there, and he could feel Lincoln giving the speech.
Wow.
And it was
I can imagine that.
Very exciting with him. One thing I forgot to mention, The thing I loved most was I could hear Jenna and Barbara, and I could hear Marshall and Walker giggling and laughing and riding bikes and swimming and who knew what. But anyway, and George loved that. They would swim and then they'd come into and Neil's children. But those, they lived in Washington. Doro's children and Jenna and Barbara would come. They all came to visit, but it was so cute. You could hear that it made it home, and you heard.
Imagine that.
And besides that, when your own house, when your grandchildren come, you work. When they come to the White House, they're 92 people who will take care of them.
So when did you think of restoring the Lincoln Room? Speaking of Lincoln, since that was, I was able to see that, and you just did an amazing job.
Well, you do think of presidents the whole time you're there, and there's a great comfort in that because you think of all the other challenges that other presidents faced and that our country faced and how we...
Stupid bitch.
And it was very comforting after September 11th to know that we can overcome this too, and that we'll move on. And while peace may not be forever, neither is war. And there's a great continuity, really, of living in a house where all the presidents, every one of them, except for George Washington, had lived before you. And one of the things you do when you live there is you live with these effects of all the people that lived there before you. You live with their decorating. You live with their taste, their choice in furniture or in china or in decorative arts, all the things that were acquired by the White House during other terms. And slowly, I moved different pieces from the storage and set up each room. And then at one point during the second term, we determined that it was time to redo the Lincoln bedroom. It had last been done during President Ford, I believe. Actually, it was set up as a bedroom after Truman renovated the White House. The bed had actually been in a room that's now the upstairs dining room across the hall from the presidential bedrooms. The room that's now set up as the Lincoln bedroom was Lincoln's office. Before the West Wing was built, obviously all the offices were down at that end of the residence hall. And it was the room that Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation in. We owned one of the 5 original copies of the Gettysburg Address written in Lincoln's hand, and that was in the room. And our guest who would come stay in the Lincoln bedroom would look at that copy of the Gettysburg Address and read it and weep. It was very, very moving to see it. And so I worked with the White House Historical Association, with the furniture curators and historians that are part of the advisory board, and we had a little remnant of the wallpaper then on the wall of his room. We had photographs of the Lincoln bed with the gold corona with purple and gold drapes that hung down from the corona. We knew from White House records that the corona had been sent away from the White House in 1927. So we reproduced all those things. So it's not a real reproduction because it's neither an office or a bedroom, but instead both. We went back to the same mill in England that had run the carpet for him on the 27-inch
Wow.
loom. And we knew from the records that the carpet was G and O, which the curators think meant green and oak, green and brown. And we went to the same mill, and they didn't have records of what they'd actually sold to the White House, but we used a pattern that we think was the pattern. So it was really very, very fun. It's a great
I remember
way
seeing it was so exciting just to know that Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in that very room. There's actually a great story. He had shaken so many hands that morning on New Year's morning that when he went to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, his own hand was numb and shaking. He put the pen down. He said, "If ever my soul were in an act, it is in this act. And if I sign with a shaking hand, posterity will say he hesitated." So he waited and waited until he could sign, and it's a really big, bold hand for him.
Abraham Lincoln.
No, it's great.
Do you remember the first guest of the Bush family who stayed in that bed? And we immediately sent a new mattress for the Lincoln bed. It was the most uncomfortable bed. may be historic, but it was Bucky and Patty bought it.
I think it was Bucky.
Our brother and sister-in-law said nobody could sleep on this bed.
I'll never forget one night I was able to sleep in what was Churchill's room, and there was no way I could
Queen's
sleep. I was certain he was sitting in the corner drinking his brandy and smoking
cigar.
his cigar. In fact, that bedroom is the theme of a favorite story in World War II. When Churchill came there right after Pearl Harbor, he and Roosevelt were supposed to sign this document putting the Allied nations against the Axis powers, but Roosevelt awakened that morning not liking the word Associated Nations, which is what they were calling themselves, so he wanted to call them the United Nations. Comes wheeling into Churchill's bedroom to tell him the news, but Churchill's just coming out of the bathtub and has nothing on. So Roosevelt said, "I'm so sorry, I'll come back in a few moments," but Churchill, ever able to speak in a very formal voice, said, "Oh no, please stay. The Prime Minister of Great Britain has nothing to hide from the President."
See, fool? See? See, dummy? See, look. See, stupid? Look, see? See? See, stupid? Look, fool, look. Look, fool, see? Look, dummy? See, dummy, look. 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 Does it?